Okay, so OpenAI has come out with O3. O3 is their latest reasoning model, follows on from DeepSeek and Alibaba's Qwen 2.5. Now, it's getting a ton of hype online, but is that hype warranted? I'm going to show you what are the differences between O1 and O3. I'm going to do a quick comparison between DeepSeek and O3 using a real use case that you can take away from this episode and do yourself, which is taking a dashboard from a company with a lot of metrics and turning it into an entire strategy with tactics and a memo for your executive team and lots more, just to see which one is more powerful than the other. All of that and more on this episode of Marketing Against the Grain. All right, so OpenAI is out with O3. I've been playing around with it the last 24 hours. It came out on Friday. And it's pretty good, but is it like better than O1? Is it better than DeepSeek? Well, this is the episode for us to dive into those details. I wanted to kind of start with the start, right? I actually wanted to start with how did we even get here? I think the last week has been so crazy. Things have been moving so fast that it's hard to remember what's even going on, right? I can't even keep track of everything that's going on, and I'm in the AI world day in, day out. I haven't even had time for a shave because there's so much happening. I'm out here recording videos, playing with models, building things with these different models, just like deep in the AI weeds. But even for me, I'm pretty overwhelmed. So I thought what I could do to help all of you is just take a step back and maybe spend a quick couple of minutes of talking through how we actually got here, right? What is the evolution of the OpenAI models? How have we actually got here? So, okay, let's talk about the foundational models, GPT-4 and GPT-4o. In March 2023, OpenAI comes out with GPT-4. That's a multimodal model. It's capable of processing text and images, and it really sets a new standard on AI performance. Now, keep in mind the dates here. That's March 2023. So they follow it up in 2024, not that long ago, with the release of GPT-4 the O stands for Omni, which really, it expands in those capabilities. It's fully multimodal. Multimodal means you can have text, images, and audio. And actually, they started to progress into video with Sora. So it really offered this kind of new frontier of AI models. It was very cost effective. The performance looks much better. State-of-the-art results, multilingual, all of these kind of incredible things happening. And they were really the foundational models, these kind of multimodal models that set new standards in terms of what these AI models could deliver upon. And then we fast forward. So we had May 2024. We go then to September 2024. And that marks the debut of the O1 series, right? These models like O1 Preview, O1 Mini. And so these models are the first reasoning models, at least the first reasoning models released to the public that the public can actually play around with. And what do we mean by that? Well, the reasoning models think before they actually respond, right? One of the things you have to do in those foundational models, ChatGPT-4 and 4o, is you had to kind of give it a chain of thought. And the chain of thought is, here are the steps I want you to go through to complete a task. Now, what these companies have figured out is people are not very good at prompting. So AI would get much more usage and much more adoption if the AI itself could give itself its own chain of thought and work out all the steps it needs to do to deliver on what you ask. And that's really what the reasoning models can do. They have their own private chain of thought. And they have a more deliberate approach to completing complex tasks. So when you're prompting a foundational model versus when you're prompting a reasoning model, that prompt is quite different. And really one of the things I think through is a reasoning model, you really want to have a complex task of at least 5 or more steps versus a foundational model, which is good at doing a much more simplistic test. And so when they launched these reasoning models, September 2024, the O1 models performed much better across all these benchmarks, right? We had O1 achieved a score of, I think, 83% on an International Mathematics Olympic qualifying exam. That is pretty good, right? Because GPT-4o, the foundational model, got 15% to 83. That's a pretty big step up. And so then we are May 24, September 24, and now we're December 2024, and OpenAI starts to kind of seed the idea of these O3 models coming out and giving it to people for private testing. And these models really further refine those reasoning capabilities. They introduce a lot more deliberate step-by-step thinking in. They're trained on some more superior data, so they should have better performance on complex tasks. And we're going to get into just how good is O3 versus O1, because I think that is super important. So we're going to get into that, but I wanted to give like, just where are we in this evolution? So I wanted to show quickly this table. I try to do out a little table to help you all, and even me, figure out like what is actually going on between these two models. And then we'll dive into some of the actual takes that other people had. What is the difference between this O1 model and this O3 model? Like, where are the steps up? So in terms of how it thinks, the O1 models use a basic step-by-step method to solve problems, chain of thought, but it actually has a private chain of thought. Remember, you don't have to provide a step-by-steps in these models. The way you prompt on reasoning models versus reasoning models is very different, right? You don't need to give reasoning models like the O1 series of models a chain of thought, which is a series of steps to go through. This O3 uses a more advanced, detailed step-by-step process, simulated reasoning for better results. Basically, when I read up on this, it has trained on just better data, and so its ability to do more complex tasks is higher. When we're going to get into some of the benchmarks, you can actually see that is true, especially for maths, especially for coding, and these other types of things. There's some safety stuff in the O3 model, right? It actually has some additional safety checks called deliberate alignment. Basically, it should help reduce errors and hallucinations. So one of the things Sam Altman said at some point recently is he doesn't really believe AI is going to be very good until you can ask it the same question 10,000 times and get the same answer 10,000 times. Today, that is more like half the time you're going to get the same answer, right? AI is still quite unreliable, and that's why in a lot of cases, it's still not great for production-ready use cases. Cost and efficiency options. So there's a lot of pressure on OpenAI to bring down costs because of DeepSeek, because of Qwen, the two Chinese model launched over the last week, which are both open source and both free. For the O1 model, generally one version with standard performance. So in the O3, they're offering much cheaper versions, which is the O3 Mini, which has come out. And I'll go through some of the costs, but that is much faster and cheaper for completing tasks. And they're actually bringing O3 into the freemium tier to give to all of the free users and making it free for pro users. So again, the cost of models are being commoditized, and the cost to access these things are actually coming down over time, which is pretty incredible. The cost of intelligence and reasoning is becoming almost pennies to access, and that's a crazy thing to think about. And here we go. So O1 is suitable for straightforward tasks. I don't believe that's actually true. I think I would call this out to be slightly inaccurate here. That's a bad note for me. It's good for like complex tasks, but the O3 model should just be better at even more complex tasks, right? It has the ability to go after more complex tasks, especially again in math, code, and scientific problems. They're both good for complex tasks, as I said, because they're reasoning models. When you prompt them to do something, like why would you use the foundational models that are non-reason versus reasoning? Well, the reason models are usually better for something that has 5 or more tasks, inclusive of O1, but O3 actually should be able to do things that are much more complex. So that's a little bit of the differences between O1 and O3, because sometimes I think when you're playing around with these things, it can't be, unless you're like building apps and coding or doing really hard math problems, for the average user, sometimes it's not actually that easy to see. And so there were a bunch of good takes on this. I thought we could get into some because versus me, not just me creating a table, but let's get into say what some of the people are actually saying O3 is really good for, better for. Who better to tell us than Sam Altman himself? So O3 did create a ton of noise. Again, coding, maths, and science. On coding tasks, O3 will outperform O1 at a massive cost reduction. They really are trying to make things better and cheaper. That is the AI path people are on today, especially with the release of DeepSeek and Qwen. I expect this trend to continue, but also the ability to get marginally more performance for exponentially more money will be really strange. What does he mean by that? We are going to live in a world where intelligence equivalent to a human is free to access. And that is a mind-bending thought. I actually have not even figured out all of the second order, third order, fourth order things that happen because human intelligence is free. Usually human intelligence dictates what you earn in the world. Not always, but mostly it is like down to intelligence. But now you have intelligence given away for pennies, given away for free, because all of these models are having to compete with each other.
Look, we all love ChatGPT. You've probably used it before, and if you haven't, stick around because you're going to want to listen to this. You know, I've used AI a ton. I use ChatGPT for research, for writing. I use Claude to put guides together for whether I'm taking a trip or I'm working on a project at work. It's awesome. Well, I've got something that will make ChatGPT an even better experience for you. We've got this killer ChatGPT bundle that will take your prompting to the next level. It has over 100 prompts and a step-by-step guide to integrate it across your workflow. It is a total game changer. If you want it, I'll drop a link in the description below. Now let's get back to today's show.
So Sam Altman thinks this is much, much better for coding. I have another good tweet here, which actually talks a little bit about O3's ability to code, because I think coding is one of the ones that it is better at according to people who build complex apps. I have used it to start to create a research agent that is not that complex. I used it to create a snake game this morning where you have the little ball going around. Again, not that complex. It does a pretty good job of that. In competitive program, O3 has an ELO rating of 2727 on Codeforces, putting it at the 99.95 percentile. There are probably at maximum 200 people in the world who could beat this model in a competitive programming contest. Again, intelligence for free. You can actually have a coder who is in the top 200 people in the world, who never sleeps, who doesn't ask for any additional holidays, who doesn't ask for any additional money, who doesn't say, I'm not going to do that because I don't think it's a good idea. You just have this incredible coder, top 200 person in the world, who can build you stuff. Like, why are we just all not building stuff? It feels like crazy it feels crazy if you have access to these tools that we're just not developing things, building things to make our lives better, to make other people's lives better. This is just an insane thing to think about, that you actually have access to this person who is that good at coding and will just do things for you for the cost of pennies, right? In the freemium tier, you can actually get access to this in the freemium tier on OpenAI. DeepSeek, we're going to get into the comparable DeepSeek. DeepSeek, just as good, totally free. Actually, just an unbelievably crazy thing to think about. The other thing I wanted to quickly talk on, which I had seen in some of the research I've done, obviously started to use the model pretty extensively, is the O3 model has a lot more autonomy. So what do I mean by autonomy? Well, it can actually it's the first model that looks to be able to kind of self-direct itself, right? There's been instances where it's been able to update its own code. It can update its own code. It can connect to different code sections. Basically, it can go to different places in your app and suggest improvements without anyone prompting it to do that. There's been instances of it doing that, saying, hey, you can make this better, this better, this better. And no one has prompted the AI assistant to do that. And so it has actually some autonomous decision-making within it, right? Updating its code, being able to identify places to make your code better without you even asking it. This is a form of, an AI being autonomous in a way we haven't seen before. And I think here's another good example of some of the benefits that O3 has as a model. I think Aaron Levy, who's the CEO and founder of Bot, really like this use case. And so math and reasoning in AR are finally getting started, right? O3 is really another model in keeping with DeepSeek R1, because I do want to get into that, because I don't think O3 is much better than DeepSeek, which is crazy to think about. But testing O3 with Box AI, where it's asked to predict Meta's Q4 revenue, I instantly thought about building this agent, and I am going to build an agent where I can just put in any company and it predicts the upcoming quarterly results based upon the data it has. But in this case, they give it kind of sketchy data from Q3, because Q4 results from Meta have already been predicted, just to see how good it is at math and reasoning. AI predicted 47.7 billion. The real result was 48.4 billion. So less than a billion out. Analysts had 47 billion. So it was closer than analysts, right? Think about that. The O3 model took limited amount of data and predicted Meta's earnings better than most financial analysts. So now you don't just have a top 200 coder in your pocket, you have a financial analyst who can predict potential company earnings and stock prices. One of the things I'm doing with O3 is giving it access to my portfolio, and I'm going to ask it to every week tell me what external trends and tell me anything that I need to do to rebalance, sell something, buy more of something. Because I now have a financial analyst who can do that for me and doesn't cost me any money, right? It's just an incredibly insane world that we live in, that we have access to these tools. We have access to financial advisors who are just always on. We have access to world-class coders that are always there to help us do things. But what about DeepSeek? Okay, we're going to get into another little table that I created to show you the differences between O3 and DeepSeek. But for the most part, there are some places where O3 has spiked. And so one of the tests that they do to look at the ability for O3s to understand the world around it is basically build a little app that has a bouncing ball, and the AI has to be able to figure out where the ball would go to based upon the kind of corners of the hectagon. So basically the ball should be affected by gravity and friction, right? We're determining AI's ability to understand science, to understand the way the world works. And one of the ways to do that is, well, look, do you understand enough about gravity and friction to figure out how the ball hits off the different corners? And O3 Mini crushes DeepSeek R1 in this use case. Now, I don't know if there's a lot of the average user who wants to use this will say, well, the reason that I'm going to use this model over this one is because when I want to have a ball hit off the corners of edges of things, O3 is better. But it does show you where the model can spike over others. And so in this case, like O3 crushes DeepSeek. But there's so many different things we can use AI for. So like, is it better than DeepSeek? The reason it really matters is because OpenAI launched this in an expedited way because of DeepSeek. DeepSeek has put a ton of pressure in OpenAI, and stay tuned. We're going to get into a real use case, and we're going to actually, for people who do marketing, for people who do growth, for people who want to grow their businesses, and we're going to show really is O3 better than DeepSeek R1 for the things that we actually want to do. We're going to give it a very complex task and a task to do for us and see if it's better or not. So this is kind of a table comparing O3, DeepSeek R1, and Qwen. Now, Qwen doesn't have a lot of external data. It didn't actually get a ton of write-ups about it, so there's not as much comparison of data with Qwen. It's harder to compare with the other two models because for some reason, there just wasn't as much interest in it as DeepSeek R1. I think because DeepSeek R1 was straight out of the gate, free, open source, but Qwen 2.5 from Alibaba has open sourced their documentation as well. But where are we with O3? And so reason in the benchmark performance, there is some evidence that O3 is better on certain benchmarks, right? There, I list them here. I honestly don't know all of these different benchmarks, but they're all maths and coding. But DeepSeek, from what I have looked into, offers pretty similar performance for, again, lower costs. So in terms of reason and benchmark performance, there are certain benchmarks that O3 performs better at. The big thing we'll see when we do the prompt is chain of thought transparency. Chain of thought is basically being able to see the model go through the exact steps it's doing to complete a task. So OpenAI are still hiding that information. They show you some of it. They show you how it breaks down the task to complete, but it does not show you its chain of thought, the logic it's going through to complete that task. What I really like about DeepSeek R1 is it shows its thought process. And I think that is as valuable as actually just the output. You can see what the AI is doing to actually break apart that problem and actually do the work. Cost efficiency and scalability. So OpenAI are trying to get much more cost efficient. That's why they've brought out O3 Mini, but it's still not going to be as good as DeepSeek. DeepSeek is still far lower cost, and that is a problem for OpenAI. And then we can maybe skip through the safety and alignment mechanisms. Not great that I'm actually skipping through that, but what's happening today is these models used to be a competition between large US companies. Now it's a competition between countries, and that is somewhat of a worry because I've seen people use the language of we need to win the AI war. I hope we don't think of this as a war versus as technology that can help humanity live better lives. So O3, all in all, interesting model. But I think the thing that we all care about is, well, for my stuff, is it better? Like, should I actually use this? Is it a model that's going to help me do better marketing, better growth, grow my business? So let's get into a quick prompt. And so let's show you the prompt, all right? Because it's easier to show you in a documentation. Then we're going to run it through DeepSeek, and we're going to run it through DeepSeek, and then we're going to run it through O3. And it's purposely a prompt that actually has a bunch of steps, and I'm prompting it in the way that you would prompt a reasoning engine. I'm not giving it clear-cut steps. I'm not giving it, you are a growth analyst, like a role. Here's examples of what I want you to do. That's called few-shot examples. You don't need to do that for reasoning models. You do that for non-reasoning models like the ones we started with, ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 4o. So basically we have these problem statement. We want a 2-page memo for a product of the company. So like you get a memo ask from your exec team, you want to grow 100% year on year. This is a 30 million ARR business. We're going to ask it to do the problem statement, which is a concise overview of the current growth challenges faced by the company. It should know enough to actually pull out some of this from the dashboard I'm going to give it. Key metrics. So basically identify critical metrics to focus on to drive growth. Tactics for improvement. So it's going to actually give me some core tactics to improve those metrics, any kind of risk mitigations, and then the resources I need. So there's actually a bunch of work in this, right, to get that 2-page memo, and I give it some other things in terms of formatting and additional instructions. We are going to give this prompt to both of the AI models. Okay, let's put it into DeepSeek O3 Mini. One of the biggest drawbacks is I actually cannot upload files, which really actually sucks. All right, so we run in this use case. Let me just go back. It's pretty messy here. So what I've discovered is O3 Mini obviously doesn't allow you to upload things. So I had to copy and paste the dashboard in CSV format, which probably isn't actually great. That's a pretty annoying thing. Why have they not? Yeah, so I think O3 because it's O3 Mini and they want it kind of fast, which is very fast. They're not allowing file uploads. I assume in the O3 Pro model that will come out very soon, they're going to allow all of that. It's a limitation. It isn't a bug. It sucks. I think you really need to have context, and to have context, you need file uploads. So O3 model, like the O3 model Mini, is like good for, again, coding, math. It accesses the internet and can do reasoning. So it's actually a pretty great search companion, but the lack of file upload sucks. So basically, you see it doing the outline. So it's not giving you, I'll show you the equivalent of DeepSeek. It gives you much more chain of thought, but basically does a structured breakdown, focuses on key metrics. So it's pulled out I'm honing on essential metrics, new signups, conversion, activation rate. It's actually basically done them all, has it? Okay, here we go. So what's it found from the dashboard? So again, I didn't tell it exactly what to do. So I think this is pretty interesting. So in PLG, SaaS company faces several critical challenges that must be addressed to achieve. This is first draft of this prompt. I would definitely need to hone this in. Analysis of recent growth dashboard. So it gives some recent trends, inconsistent conversion rates, variable activation rates, user engagement concerns. A low DAU, daily active users, and stickiness metric shows periods of high engagement. These figures are inconsistent, potentially undermining retention efforts. Okay. Retention and churn. User retention rates and churn percentages vary, with churn rates as high as 8, that is high, in some months, directly impacting monthly recurring revenue. I will say the data I give it is synthetic data because I can't give it any of my internal data. So again, synthetic data can be a little hit or miss, but for the purposes of showing you this, it's the best I can do, but it's not as complex as real world data will be. And then it picks out revenue monetization. So what key metrics? So right off the bat, that's too many key metrics. It hasn't done an incredible job of honing into. I could have said, do 3. Basically, I could have given my resources and said, based upon these resources, only give me the metrics that my resources map to versus all of the metrics, right? You're not going to work on every single metric. You're going to pick out the core bottlenecks and work on those. You want to prioritize. Now, I think in the prompt, I didn't say to prioritize, did I? I said critical. I should have said prioritize the most important, so I could really do that. And then it gives me tactics for improvement. A/B tests, examples. So it gives me examples. I did ask for examples, so I wanted to show that it's connected to the web. Iterate, A/B, assign an important screen to identify elements. So it's just basic. This is basic. User segment. Utilize data analytics to segment users by behavior and tailor board. These are all pretty basic. I'm going to be honest. These are all very basic. Risks. So it does some pretty good examples. I do like the way it's pulled out the case studies, right? Data-driven feature adoption, identify underutilized features and promote them through targeted messaging and in-app notifications, very best practice. But here, I do like the way that it's giving me the case study for every single one and tailoring it. Yeah, that's pretty good for a first. I could definitely iterate on this, but I love the examples, right? It's giving me the action and then an example. It's a pretty cool little structure. Implement proactive customer success interventions, including regular check-ins, webinars, and user communities to reduce churn. It's not wrong in any of this. It's just so broad. I would need to hone it into 2 of these and then go very, very deep, which we might do as a little follow-up if we have time. I want to get into DeepSeek. Risks and mitigation strategy, over-reliance on A/B testing. Clear. So this is pretty good. It's giving me risks and mitigations. resource allocation imbalance, diverting too many resources to one area could neglect other vital segments. Adopt a balanced scorecard approach to ensure comprehensive growth across all key metrics. I don't believe that. You should only have a couple of key metrics. Market and competitive risks, implementation delays. So give me some good first pass on like critical resources that I'm going to need to do all of this, and then a little conclusion. Give me the references. So if you're like, again, I'm being critiquing here, but to take a single dashboard and give me a 2-page memo that is exec ready, that is still pretty amazing. It's going through all of the tasks. It's showing the reasoning. It's accessing the internet. Now, what I would do is play around with that prompt to get it to be much more specific in a couple of areas. Let's head over to see what DeepSeek has done. And I will say the hard thing here is I do think the synthetic data does hold it back a little bit because it's just not as complex. So there you go, right? It's thinking. This is awesome. So think about the comparable here, right? What did OpenAI show? They showed that they're outlining the memo. I'm starting with a structured breakdown, and it kind of talks a little bit about this, and then focusing on key metrics. But it does not actually give you its chain of thought. That's the table I showed you earlier on. That is internal. Look at this, right? It's very conversational. It's like a Claude, right? Okay, let's dive into the user's request. They provide a detailed memo for product-led growth SaaS company. They provided a detailed memo for product-led SaaS company aiming to double their AR. I provided data. Now they've posted the data set twice. What's this? Now they've pasted the same data set twice. Maybe they wanted to highlight the data, or there was a copy and paste error. There was a copy and paste error. Either way, my job is to figure out what they need next. This is so cool. Looking at the original query, the user wants a memo based on growth dashboard. Yes. The assistant provided a comprehensive memo with problem statements, key metrics, tactics, risks, and resources. Now the user has just reposted the data again. Perhaps says they want a deeper analysis. Okay, I don't know what happened there. Wait, the data spans from January to December 2024. The memo uses averages, but maybe the user wants a more granular look. Yes, let's check. Let's go through this. Okay, cool. It starts doing the actual work. All right, it just keeps like dissing me. The user's a bit of a moron, it wants to say. So it's going to go through, it's starting to do the analysis. The user also mentioned referencing external sources. The assistant included some, but maybe they need more specific ones to the data trends observed. For example, if daily active user drops in March, what strategies have other companies used to recover? Yep. All good. The critical resource section mentions a $500K budget. I don't know where they got that from. I don't mention it. Okay. All pretty. Okay. This, again, so cool, right? Due to technical issues, the search service is temporarily unavailable. There's something going on with DeepSeek when I'm recording this video. It's the search isn't working, uploads isn't working. So I don't know what's actually happening here. I think they have had some problems with denial of service attacks. So anyway, let's go through it. This is pretty cool, right? There's the problem statement. So it's got same thing, conversion rates, activation rate fluctuations, quite similar to O3. Probably because like of all the chatter that's happened. If you listen to the chatter, there's like a lot of chatter that this is really trained on ChatGPT's models, and so probably going to be quite similar. Low stickiness and retention, MRR and LTV to volatility. So actually, but again, if you actually just take this, it's pretty amazing, right? If I give it a bunch of unstructured data, it can do some really great analysis and show me all of the kind of most important things. Key metrics to your target, conversion rate, activation rate, stickiness. I like this. This is pretty cool. It's actually better than what they provided, right? There's not the stickiness. I like the stickiness. No, they do have stickiness. Yeah, okay. Pretty similar. Are you guys copying each other's homework? Impact on growth. Current average target. See this? It's actually giving me the targets I need to get to mixed across these metrics to make 100% AR. So my original goal was to drive 100% year-on-year growth. And what it's done here is actually try to build me the path to get there. And O3 did not do that. And I actually noticed that. I was wondering, was DeepSeek going to do that? It's tactics for improvement. So we're going to stabilize conversion rates, root cause, friction and high intent user journeys. April's, I don't know what it means by that, but friction and high intent user journeys. We have no segmentation done. I will say that again, if you, I'm dependent on synthetic data. I'm not saying give DeepSeek R1 your data unless you're running locally on a machine because of the privacy and security concerns. You can use O3 Mini if you have an enterprise seat like I do for the O1 models. So I'm not saying use DeepSeek, but just these reasoning models, like if you give it more data context, then this kind of stuff is really good. But it's the format I really like. It's giving me root cause. It's giving me some actions. It's giving me a little case study, the same. Has it used the same exact, let's see. This will be pretty interesting. Do they use the same example? Yeah. Let's see how many examples are the exact same. Improve activation rates, right? Gives me the root cause. Users fail to experience core value. Guided onboarding, personalized emails. Let's see what it gives me for activation rate here. Yes. Dropbox. This is actually pretty funny. Increase stickiness and retention. I really like the way they formatted this. Notion. I think Notion. They didn't do Notion. This little deviation. There we go. Oh no, Gainsight. 2 actually. They give me 2. Customer success programs. I like this. Pricing and upsell optimization. That is very true if you want to continue to grow. They give me Zendesk and Gainsight. They've given me, they haven't actually, this difference, retention and revenue growth initiatives. Okay, there are some differences, which is good. Optimize monetization, a little bit of Zoom. Zoom doubled ARPU with usage-based upsells. It's very good. Again, all very good. The way you work on this is then you get it to dig in and extrapolate on a couple of these. Risk mitigations, overloading user prompts, very, very true. Budget overspend on experiments, very, very true. Feature adoption fatigue, all of these are pretty spot on. It's giving me some good critical resources, give me a good conclusion, references. Again, this is very good, all right? Very, very first prompt has to go through a bunch of things and figure them out itself. For DeepSeek, you can see it figuring out itself. The way to look at this is, if you look at this and say, well, I think I could do better, probably you could, because you have all the context, you're not using synthetic data, and you're iterating on your work. I could easily go further here and just ask it to follow up and go deeper on a couple of those tactics. But I wanted to end with this. I think this is the best way to end this. So McKay Wrigley, awesome follow if you want to know everything about AI. But this is a big one, right? I replaced every AI agent and workflow I have run an OpenAI's O1 model with new O3 models. They're all working. They're all better. All he did was replace the model. 9x cheaper, 4x faster, right? The O3 mini models here perform much better on competition in terms of coding. We talked about this benchmark, and much, much cheaper, right? The O3 mini model is much cheaper than the O1 models. But it's this here. I replaced every agent. So agents are going to be a big part of our workforce. They're going to be digital workers. The advantage agents have, well, have a lot of advantages over humans, but the big advantage they have is every couple of weeks at the moment, they get an incredible upgrade that make them infinitely smarter. And all you have to do is build agents for critical use cases and assume the models are going to catch up to what you want that agent to be able to do, and it will. So my advice continues to be, start to build agents into your go-to-market, into how you do work today. Even if the models are not capable of doing the work in the way that you want, just put them into pilot and assume the model will catch up to where you need it to be, because it will. That's this episode of Marketing Against the Grain. I hope you got everything you needed for O3 minis. I will see you the following week, where I assume it's going to be another crazy week in the land of AI.
This data is wrong every freaking time.
Have you heard of HubSpot? HubSpot is a CRM platform where everything is fully integrated.
Whoa, I can see the client's whole history, calls, support tickets, emails, and here's a task from 3 days ago I totally missed.
HubSpot. Grow better.